There are very few things that you can actually count on in the real world, especially as crap is hitting the fan everywhere. But one thing you can count on is there's either a Mortal Kombat game that just went out, is going out, or has just been announced. And we are at that moment one more time here with Mortal Kombat Aftermath. This is DLC, story-based DLC for Mortal Kombat 11. I'm going to talk about it today. Mortal Kombat has been around forever. It started in 1992, which means like half of you weren't even a third of the way to your 18th birthday, if my metrics for viewership is right. Math is fun, and you'd need it to figure out the number of times that Mortal Kombat has actually come around and released a title in this series. Hell, they have more games in the series than some crappy fighting games have probably sold in their lifetime. One thing that we don't always get from them, though, is story-based DLC with a little bit of TLC. And that's actually what we're getting here in Mortal Kombat Aftermath. Aftermath alone is $40. The Aftermath collection with the game and most of the other DLC prior to Aftermath is actually only $60. You know what also is $60? 60% of people who watch my videos are not subscribed. Hit the subscribe button. I'd love you for it. Let's begin. Graphics are going to be up first. We already know what Mortal Kombat looks like. You can love it or dislike it. You can think that the oddly stilted animations are great, or the insanely detailed homicidal demonic maniacs are just running around killing everybody, and that's a cool thing. Whether you like it or not, that is what this game is about. Mortal Kombat Aftermath doesn't change that. What it does is brings a couple characters into the fray, as well as a couple new arenas and some special effects. First, let's discuss the fighters. Now, new characters, these are the consummate professionals in the killing arts. You have Shiva, four-armed pummeler, half human, half dragon, which for whatever reason in the world here gives those characters four arms, like Goro. Coming in, looking a little bit like Red Sonja, a little bit like a punk rocker, and then they adopted a kid and then gave him a leather fetish. I actually dig that design, especially when you get some more unlocks. Following up is Fujin, Wind God, Kung Fu movie character spinning around the levels like a more charismatic version of Raiden. Also, some excellent combos with this character and attacks from him, which I'm going to get to in a bit in the gameplay section. There's a number of costumes and designs and just the way this character's put together I really like. But speaking of characters, let's talk about the one that mattered the most to me, and that is RoboCop. That's right, they picked what I consider to be one of the most amazing ideas for a DLC character to go into this title. Peter Wellers also returns to do the voiceover. And if you ignore the one little caveat that you could basically shoot him in the mouth and kill him instantly, this is a character that comes from a world where somehow on the 50th floor of a business building, there was a robot that proceeded to shoot through a dude just minding his own business for like 25 minutes in the first movie. And they considered that a good guy at the starting of that movie. RoboCop is from there. This is a movie filled with menace. He's one part machine, one part fallen police officer. However, one of the problems with RoboCop is he is a very stilted character in the original fiction itself, and it does translate fairly terribly to Mortal Kombat. It just doesn't look near as good as some of the other characters, including Terminator, who I'm not absolutely in love with when it comes to this game as a DLC character himself. He looks a little too stilted compared to everybody else. That being said, his fatality is awesome, and he does have the ability to whip out a 50 caliber in the middle of battle, which is no end of fun when you're fighting it out. I do wish that there was a little bit more flexibility there and that they had taken a little bit more fiction, because there's some prop ideas they could have taken from the movies and turned them into attacks, which they didn't do. When it comes to graphics overall, these are characters that look very good. I dig their outfits, and as you get more customizations for them, of course, they only increase. When it comes to the new stages, including the Retrocade, which switches backgrounds when you interact with the projector in the back, which I have to say is awesome, and I think it's probably my favorite. You get a couple stages. Overall, graphically, I do like this. I think these characters fit in as well as they can with Mortal Kombat 11. With a lot of fans, though, I think your mileage may vary.
I thought about being police once.
What kept you off the straight and narrow?
Straight and narrow doesn't pay shit.
Onaga whispers your name to the dark.
I shall not be his puppet, as Goro was.
He would have you for his bride.
Round.
What is it like, standing in Raiden's shadow?
I imagine much like standing in Liu Kang's.
I have no idea what you mean.
Round one.
When it comes to sound, this is the same over-the-top punches and kicks and environmental sounds that play out. There's no real surprise. Swords cut through the air with whistles, and people light on fire with that sharp little pitched crackle that you can hear. More importantly, though, RoboCop finishing you off with the help of an old friend sounds pitch perfect, And the first time I did that, I was in love. That was very cool. I also like his different gun sounds that he had for the various different weapons. I dig the sound in these games. It is a little over the top. It is a little crunchy, and it definitely does attempt to mimic arcade games, but I think we all expect that and certainly wouldn't expect story DLC to suddenly change it. And that brings us to music. This is pretty good. It was actually hard to identify in other areas that weren't the story area where some of the tracks were actually different, but I like the music for Mortal Kombat. Sort of is what it is, except for one area in the credits song that I thought was a little odd. The music really does fit and adds an element of that over-the-top B-movie mystique that I think we all expect. And that brings us to voice. So throughout the story, you have various characters, some new, some sort of sidelined, coming back through Aftermath's story, which gets some time with some characters that you might not expect, but seriously, hats off to Carrie as Shang Tsung. This dude is just an egotistical douchebag throughout, and he does such an amazing job. The guy legit steals the show from start to finish. The devs are always trying to make it sound like the characters are meeting up or not really saying random one-liners, but instead are somehow connected. But you do get that moment where it seems like SpongeBob is just going to run in and be like, "I like muffins," and then run back out again. A lot of times when these characters meet up in versus battles and stuff like that, things don't necessarily make sense. In the main story, they do, and they work really well. This over-the-top acting that they do in Mortal Kombat nails it perfectly. They understand how to do it. And yeah, the story makes almost no sense whatsoever, and I'll get to that in a bit. Nevertheless, I enjoyed the delivery of everybody's voice. And having Peter Weller return as RoboCop, honestly, very awesome. I only wish he was actually in the major story because I think that would have been just such a bonus. And speaking of that, let's discuss gameplay and story. So Aftermath falls right after Liu Kang defeated Kronika, terrible named god of timepieces everywhere. And he's just about to solidify the deal when Shang Tsung walks in and he's like,
"Hold up, yo. Don't celebrate too soon.
"We're going to party."
Clock lady has that razzle-dazzle, and if we don't shaggy do this bitch, she can come back. This isn't even her final form."
All right.
"You can trust me."
And what follows is a storyline that really is one of the dumbest storylines we've seen in a game. You have to turn off your logic centers right away. Of course, this is Mortal Kombat. None of the stories make sense anyway. But this is one of those ones where they try to explain it with time travel. And as they're explaining it, you're sitting back going, why don't they just do this? One of the nice things about the game is somebody suggests what you would consider to be an easy fix. And everybody's like, what? Nah, man, we need to do some other stuff. It's still fun to see these guys play off one another. I think they do a great job. It still looks good during those cutscenes, and that story, yeah, it's over the top, but it was still fun to play through. And you get 3+ hours as you play through that. Even if you don't get Aftermath, though, I want to make sure it's clear. You do get the stage fatalities, the friendships, the stages themselves as well, and all the adjustments and balances to the characters. And there are some hefty ones. For example, there's some big changes to Raiden when it comes to gameplay you'll want to check out if you're a Raiden player, and a lot of suggested changes that people have wanted. But let's talk about some of the new characters for a second. First, RoboCop is not... He's not that bad, but he is bland. I wasn't expecting him to be all fired up and arresting people at full speed, but damn, he's just bonkers slow. I'm pretty sure they mocapped old Methuselah Peter Weller himself at that moment to do this character. He may be a really good zoner. He keeps enemies off him with some ranged attacks, and that airdropped 50 caliber is awesome. But it's like the developers thought that boring was a moveset name. Everything he does looks really basic. I didn't want him spin kicking dudes in the nuts or turning on a dime. He just doesn't have a good deal of spice to him. There's something about him that just isn't very energetic, even when it comes to translating weight and force, which is something that Jax or perhaps Terminator does. And for me, it's a sad day in B-movie land. I'm sure some people will disagree with me, but I don't think anybody will disagree that Shiva is very enjoyable to play. They brought her back after a while of being gone. She's very fun to just sort of engage with, and reminds me a bit of how much I was surprised in, let's say, Injustice 2 when I played Black Canary. She was a boatload of punch combinations, combos, a couple nice kick combos as well. I didn't see, and I don't see many people maining her as a character, but that can't be said for Fujin. So it's like finding a friggin' Armani suit at a dollar store for this character compared to the other characters. This guy shows up, levitates some swords, and when he wins, he doesn't just slice the guy, he kung fu theaters himself onto the sword hilt and just stands there, mocking everyone else. He also feels profoundly unique, if a bit underpowered, which I'll talk about in a second. First, his moveset is awesome, tactically a bit more surprising than I expected from this character. At first blush, when I was playing him, I was like, this isn't very cool. But as I continued learning just some of the combinations, and we'll learn more in the next coming days, I started to really enjoy playing him. He uses wind-based attacks and has a couple really nice spots where he can surprise you with variations. But damn it, if he doesn't feel a little bit underpowered, I'm sure someone's going to data mine all this and be like, he is 2.1% less powerful than he should be when you're attacking on a Monday, or something else suitably arcane. But sometimes when I'd be long string comboing somebody to death, or more likely they were, it didn't feel like the impact exactly was there. And there were a couple times where I didn't feel like I should have probably been alive when I should have died. A little bit of a percentage issue there. These are games that, for me at least, despite my apathy towards RoboCop, I do like when they add new DLC. I like Shiva enough, and I certainly do like all of the adjustments they've made, the balance, all of those changes. Also, it's pretty nice to get story-based DLC. It's only 3+ hours, but you know what? We don't see that a lot of times. I think that's very cool. You get those friendships, as I said before, regardless if you buy this, and the stage fatalities. All that's very nice. Now, there are a couple issues that I had. First, AI issues. For setting up AI teams, I set up a couple AI teams with some moves, and I noticed that, and this is something that's happened with Mortal Kombat, and it happened a lot with Injustice as well, so just watch out when you're setting up characters. Sometimes certain moves just go completely nuts. The character just ends up bouncing around the screen and not really doing what they're supposed to. There isn't a lot of content mode-wise that you get with this, which I think would have really set it over the edge had it had that. That brings us to fun factor, because if it ain't fun, who gives a crap? Okay, so it doesn't change Mortal Kombat. So this is really for people who like Mortal Kombat and want to jump in. Are they fun to play? Yes, I would say RoboCop, though. The honest truth is I just did not enjoy him, even though I expected to. I'll continue to try as time goes on in the next couple weeks and jump in with him. But his moveset just isn't that enjoyable. It's not necessarily bad. It's not necessarily like he won't do damage to somebody or that he can't fight some of the better fighters. It's just simply that it's not really that entertaining to see or watch. And that is a difficult thing to ask from a developer when you get a character like RoboCop. But I do think that they missed a couple cues that they could have taken from the movies and put those in and made that character a bit more dynamic. I also like the stages. The retrocade is just one of my favorite, but that really depends on what you like for old callbacks, for old arcade content. This is a game where stuff's just over the top. You get to see these amazing fatalities that YouTube won't even show. Well, YouTube won't show shit anyway, but you get my drift. There's some very cool stuff there. It just depends on how much you're going to dive into it. And of course, that'll bring us to a rating. This is DLC, so this is a little bit different. I think it's overpriced. I really do. Hey, I dig it. I like that story content. I think it was enjoyably over the top and stupid. And Carrie, as Shang Tsung, nails it. Like I said, great. But those characters, I'm not 100% sure I feel really hold up their end of a $40 package. Now, if you don't own Mortal Kombat, you're going to have to find what you like about Mortal Kombat and why you don't own it already to decide if maybe you want to do the $60 package for this, which is where you do get this and the original game and most of the DLC. That might be worth it. But as DLC itself, this is overpriced. That's just the way it is. It is overpriced as DLC. It's a super short story, and even more surprising, you can't actually get these characters on the store right now for their normal prices, which of course I think we all know why, because they want you to get Aftermath, but that doesn't really make a lot of sense when you consider how they've sold the other characters themselves. That's it for me. I hope you guys like the review. It's a little bit different because it's DLC, which I normally don't get a chance to check out. I'm going to continue playing it, continue cultivating my ideas for this. And of course, you'll be able to check out Twitch tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We'll be talking about this game and a couple others. If you get a chance, subscribe here. Get a chance, follow me on Twitter, Facebook, what have you. I would love for you to join me there. And of course, you can become a patron on the Patreon website, which helps me give you guys reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap. And as always, we have an amazing team there. So if I've saved you any money or warned you away about a crappy game, maybe come on by. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.